Hi, I'm back, Aislin of the Gazette, with a video explaining one aspect or another of cartooning, what it is I do. I'm the ultimate baseball fan, and we're in for a bittersweet weekend coming up with the Blue Jays and Red Sox playing in town. Sweet because it's so nice to have baseball back. Bitter because we no longer have a major league franchise in Montreal. Some historical context here. Here's a photograph of me as a proud 10-year-old, the captain of my Little League baseball team. And again, over here, just a few years later, me standing at exactly the same location in a gorgeous little ballpark in Point St. Charles. It's still there. Love to drive by. At that time, John Little, the well-known Montreal painter, who is my godfather, did this great cartoon of me playing in right field with my proud parents standing in behind. So you can see baseball was very much a part of my youth. In fact, I'm the proud owner of this painting behind me, which was John Little. He produced in 1959. It's a scene of neighborhood surrounding Delormier Downs back in the day, the home to the Montreal Royals. A game going on in the background, festive Saturday night, beautiful thing. In fact, it ended up being a cover on Maclean's magazine back in the day. Beautiful thing. As for me, in the late 1960s, I was establishing a name for myself in Montreal as a cartoonist, and nobody, trust me, nobody was as happy about Major League Baseball coming to Montreal in 1969 in the form of the Montreal Expos. Dark hair. So I was hired on in 1972 as a cartoonist, full-time cartoonist at the Gazette. But I tried something. It was pretty courageous on my part. I said to the editor, I insist that you send me to spring training each year so that I can do a sketchbook for the newspapers. And they agreed. God, that turned into a wonderful thing. At the beginning, I was sort of doing small thumbnail sketches of the action, a little shy, a little hesitant the first year or two. Gene Mock sitting in a chair, Duke Snyder walking around, just sort of little character sketches, not bad. But then with experience under my belt, I got a lot more confident, and I started coming up with scenarios with these spring training sketch pictures, and they were quite popular, of people in different situations, in the stands, umpires, all kinds of social things going on, interviews by the media, players getting on and off the bus, the contrast in physical abilities, and a lot of tongue-in-cheek sort of cartoons snuck in there. Like so many Montrealers, I have very fond memories of those early frantic days at Parc Jarry. Jim Fanning was the general manager, and indeed became the spirit of the Expos in the long run. But here he is trying to figure out a roster with chickens and mustard bottles and all kinds of things with Gene Mock, the manager at the time. Jim Fanning became a good friend. I discovered that he was a frustrated cartoonist, and he loved to watch me draw. Also, at that time at Parc Jarry, there was an emerging superstar, Steve Rogers, who became a very dependable pitcher. So I did this character of Steve Rogers throwing a fastball. But along with him was another famous, notorious character at Parc Jarry, the peanut vendor, the guy who could throw a bag of peanuts 60 feet in a perfect strike. By 1979, after the move to the Olympic Stadium, the team actually became quite the contender through 79, 1980. And that's when we came upon the idea of doing full pages in the Gazette of all of the Expo players, including the bus squad and all kinds of things. Hugely popular, these things. And people remembered them. They'd always walk up to me and say, do you remember those full pages you did? As a result of that, we reissued a full page of the old-time Expo stars a couple of years ago, and I colorized them, and again we put these on sale and raised a terrific amount of money for charities in Montreal. By this time I'd become good friends with a couple of the ball players, particularly the spaceman Bill Lee, Here's a photo that probably management didn't want it released. Bill and I drinking in the basement of a bar, a very popular bar on Crescent Street, back in the day. Those were different times. So I began with my caricatures, having the ball players sign them. So I have this terrific collection now of a cartoon of Bill Lee with his cryptic signature. Warren Cromartie is another one. Gary Carter. Even superfan Donald Sutherland, who was always out at the Big O on the third baseline, and I had him sign this cartoon. And there were a whole array of other interesting characters at the time, Ellis Valentine, Tim Raines, Andre Dawson, even the Bus Squad. A magic year for Montreal was 1982. We hosted the All-Star Game. We were legitimate. We were part of the big leagues. Great event. And the organizers came to me and asked me, would I draw my favorite all-time baseball players in both leagues, National League and American League. So I put this whole array together. God, it was fun to do this. And also consulting people on who might be the best person at third base, all of that. And we published it in the program, but without the players' names. So it was up to the readers to try and identify and puzzle over who these different individuals were. A lot of fun. That led to a lot of work in North America for me. Not only was I established now as a political cartoonist, but I was gaining a name as a sports cartoonist. Even the New York Mets came calling and said, would you do the yearbook cover in 1983 for them, with all their stars, Tom Seaver and so on. A lot of fun to do that. You know, given my connection with the Expos, if I had to name my all-time favorite individual connected with the team, it would be Felipe Alou, who was the manager in the early 90s and did magic with the team. In fact, so much so that there was a threat of him going to the LA Dodgers for a little while. And I was asked to carry a petition down to him in Florida, Gazette readers, asking him, pleading with him to stay at the Expos, and he did, so it was nice to be a small part of that. This was Felipe's favorite cartoon, actually, of himself leading a bunch of younger Expos, as they all were at the time, along with one of those kindergarten ropes. The most talented player, and our last superstar, would be Vladimir Guerrero, as you see here. Just a multi-talented player with interesting haircuts. But that was the end of it, unfortunately, with Vlad. Then along came this character, Jeffrey Loria. At first, well greeted, we thought he was going to be the savior of the team, but he diddled and daddled and pulled strange kind of deals with other owners, ended up owning the team, folding it, and moving it out of town. He's still not a very popular individual here in Montreal. Danny Coderre is an exceptional individual in terms of his love of baseball. I suspect he loves it as much as I do. Let's hope he can build that field of dreams and get baseball back to Montreal. I'd like to close with a favorite anecdote. A number of years ago, I discovered in the handbook for the Baseball Writers Association of North America that each major league newspaper was allowed one cartoonist as a member of the association, meaning that after being a member for 10 years, you could vote for the Hall of Fame. Well, I applied, and I was accepted as a member, I suppose because I got so many sports cartoons on the editorial page. And what do you know? Applied in 1981. In 1991, I got to vote for the first time for the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. And guess who was on the ballot for the first time? The famous Canadian pitcher, Fergie Jenkins. I voted for him. He got in by one vote. My vote. Enjoy the weekend.